Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at this Photoshop file and see what we can learn about working with frequency separation. So I'm going to clean up my windows a little bit, minimize the windows that we probably won't use. Mainly we'll be working in this layers palette. And as a quick introduction to this file, it's been submitted in a really great format. I really want to give a shout out, appreciation for these layers. There's an arrows layer, which is indicating the area of work that we should pay attention to. And then there's an example layer here that's showing some example work. So it looks like the example work is retouching out some of these buildings on the waterfront, and it's been done in a single layer. So we want to demonstrate how to do this work using the frequency separation layers, which are located here: texture high pass and tones low pass. The naming of high frequency layer as texture and the low frequency layer as tones, that's entirely my convention. You'll see on the internet and with other Photoshop people, they're just saying high pass or low pass or colors or details or this and that. Just know that you just need a little system to give yourself a clue of what what is being captured in the layers. So just as a review, the texture layer contains details that inform kind of the what we get to see. So details, mainly it's about contrast, and then the tones layer is about color. So keeping that in mind, for us to successfully take out this building using frequency separation, we've got to be aware that that there's both details and color represented in what we want to change here. So it means we're going to have to approach working in each layer a little bit differently. So maybe what I'll do first is I'll identify a work area. I'll do that with just use the magnetic lasso tool for starters. Just outline some of these buildings here. Okay, let's do it's our rough capture. Okay, so this is going to be the area of work. What we can do here is let's focus on the details. Mainly right now, what we need to do with the details is we need to get rid of this building, the details of this building. So I'm just going to pay attention to this blend mode, which is screening out color and just showing, essentially it's a contrast map. If I zoom in, I want to actually replace this area of detail, which looks like a building, with this area that looks like, water, these horizontal stripes of contrast, which, approximate waves. Let me do this. I'm going to remove some of this. Okay. So what I can do here, there's a number of ways I can do this. I'm going to create a new layer right above my high frequency layer, and keeping this selection area active, I'm going to choose the clone stamp. So we're going to use that clone stamp that was used in the practice layer, but we're going to do it in a way that makes sense with frequency separation. I'm going to make sure my sample area is set to current and below. That means I'm going to be working in this layer 2, but also it's going to pay attention to data that's in this texture layer. So when I'm in my clone stamp tool, I can choose a bigger brush, select an area. I'm going to select right on this kind of lighter spot of water. Maybe what I'll also do is set my brush hardness to be maximum hardness. And now I'm going to go in and match up the horizontal contrast lines so that I'm basically extending this this water line into my area of where I want to do this edit. Okay, so it's going to look like that. So it's kind of like, for any of you who are woodworkers out there, when you're trying to match grain, it's kind of what we're doing here. So you can see if I do this correctly, I've now got this this little light streak. It's going all the way across, going all the way into this area. To do a good job at this kind of retouching, where you're going to match grain, you do want to think about changing your brush size often. It gives you a chance to pay attention to different kinds of details. And later on, when it's time to create some smoothing or variation, you can use some different tools to do that. And by having this selection area on, it allows me to kind of work in a little bit of a cavalier fashion. You know, I can actually just clone my way all the way up to the building's edge here, and I won't wreck the building. So this approach of you know, wood grain matching, for lack of a better word, really works because we're only dealing with the contrast map, the highlight details right now. If we had to deal with color at the same time, we would not be able to use this method. Okay. It looks like there's one more spot here. All right. So let's take a look. This is what looks like before. This is what it looks like after. One last thing I need to do for this to be a suitable patch for my texture high pass layer. If you see this texture layer is set to linear light blend mode, I'm going to go to layer 2, my work mode, and also set it to linear light. Okay. All right. Now the last thing I want to do is I'm going to take the selection and use it to create a mask on my high pass area. So I'm going to do this. Oops. Create the mask. Whoops, I did it wrong. Let's back out. So I have my area selected. It's selecting the inside. I'm going to invert that. by select inverse. So now the boundary is the same, but it's selecting the outside of it. And now I can set my mask. and voila, the water is gone. I can see here that there's some spots, looks like, that I have missed in my patchwork. So I'll just go back and get that done. Before I do that, I'm going to set this back to normal blend mode. Oops, looks like I also lost my selection. Let's keep going backwards. Okay. There we go. Okay, that looks better. All right, so now let's take a look at our work with the colors. You can see now it looks like a reflection of the building in the water. That we could actually take this and do a little warping to make it look like a reflection, but without the detail, this element of our photo no longer has a material presence. So these tones don't have any structure around them. There's no skeleton or framework for, to hold this as an object anymore. So anyway, we're going to use the tones now to do the same thing and replace these building tones with water tones. So same deal. I'm going to leave the selection up, and I'm going to add a new layer. And this layer, I'm going to make sure that my clone stamp tool is sampling the current layer and the layer below. And I'm just going to look for some water. And same deal. One thing to point out here, let me turn these off. The clone stamp is just getting these shades. It's not getting the details that are being conveyed here on these two layers. So I could even turn these off just to work this. For this one, I'm going to set the hardness to not be very high, because I don't need it to be. There's actually no detail being conveyed here, and I actually want to have more of a smooth, continuous type of effect. So let's do this. Let's go over here. Some nice big piece of open water. So I'm also paying attention to this sort of wood grain matching type of approach. Mainly this kind of light streak of water here, using that as my horizontal reference point. And if I don't get it perfect, that's okay. Okay. So the other thing that you know, I can do here to kind of add a little bit of realism, I can take this smudge tool and, and just clean up the wavelengths just a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at everything together. All right, so now you see, did I miss a little part of this building here? I don't know. It looks pretty good. I'm going to deselect. Voila, waterfront adjusted. Let's zoom out. And you know, if we're at practical view, let's see, what would practical view be? 100%. If we're at 100%, it's going to take somebody who's got a really trained eye to notice that that we've edited out part of the waterfront. Maybe somebody who's got some experience with that area, or if somebody's looking really close. But you know, this was just a 10-15 minute job that I did, not being too careful, and you know, I think it's pretty effective. So that's the approach to using FS with a landscape image. All right, hope that helps.